The Fusion page in Davinci Resolve is pretty intimidating, so that's why I'm going to walk through step by step everything you need to know as a beginner to get over your fear of the Fusion page and start animating. This is part one of a three-part series called Fusion for Beginners. The other two are going to be Fusion for Intermediate and Fusion for Advanced Editors, and those two will be available in our paid editors community. First link in the description. Alright, so I'm in a new project, and this is probably around what you should see. You might have the inspector tab pulled up, or the media pool or effects pulled up. So you can just click these different tabs to pull up different things. Like there's this clips tab, nodes, obviously it's this one down here. And if this is your first time looking at the Fusion tab, then don't worry because I'm going to explain everything for a beginner to Fusion. So usually how I like to use it is I have either my media pool or my effects tab open, and then I'll have, obviously you want the nodes tab open, that's where you're going to be doing most of the work. And then this inspector tab, you can either have it open or close it for now. So right now there's no clips in the media pool. This is like a completely new project. So when I want to create something from a video or photo, I need to first either bring in an adjustment clip, a photo, an icon, or a video. So this is just some stock footage. This is just like an icon. And the difference between how these are going to interact with Fusion is these two are basically blank slates, so they have nothing on them. And the only difference between these two is that the adjustment clip, you will be able to see what is under it. So like if I bring this in again on the adjustment clip and like let's say I extend it, so with the adjustment clip, you'll actually be able to see what's under it because it's like transparent, I guess, before you put anything on it. And the Fusion composition, it's going to be a black screen. So it doesn't really matter which one you use, it's just like whatever you prefer. And when you go into the Fusion tab, it's going to go into the Fusion editor of whatever clip is the highest up and whatever clip is under your playhead. So when I go into the Fusion page, it's going to go into the Fusion page of this adjustment clip. But if I want to go into the Fusion page of this like video specifically, and I didn't want to have to like move this over, then all I need to do is right click on this clip and then go to open in Fusion page. So within the Fusion page, you can see there's media in one and media out. This is for the adjustment clip, by the way. It's a little different with this clip, but I'll get to it in a second. And media in one is just like whatever is coming in. So in this case, it is just some stock footage. And this adjustment clip that I'm working on allows me to work with this stock footage without actually directly working on that layer. So you can see this is just like a blank slate. I can delete it. And then when I delete it, I still have this footage here. And the media out is whatever the final product is going to look like. So I'm going to zoom in here by holding Command and just scrolling in with my trackpad. But if you have mouse or you're using Windows, I think other ways are like using your scroll wheel on your mouse and maybe holding Control. So just try those and it should work. And you'll be able to zoom in and see that there is a dot here. So there's actually two circles and one dot is highlighted, which is the second one. And this is referring to the two screens that you might have. So if you actually had two screens up until this point and were confused, this is the button that's going to allow you to change between two views and one view. And this is helpful when you're editing in 3D, but we won't get into that yet. So let's say I bring in this background node, which is just going to be a solid color, and I press 1 on it. If I press 1, it will show me what this node looks like by itself, which is just a black background in the first viewer. And then in the second viewer, you can see how the second dot is highlighted in this one. In the second viewer, you can see the final product, which is the media out. And the reason why the black background doesn't go on top of it is because it's not actually connected to this main chain here. So you can add whatever you want in between it, and then whatever goes into here completes the final product. You'll get to understand more when I show you some examples. So I'm going to show you why the Fusion composition is a little bit different. And you can see you don't have any media in one. So what you need to do is actually start with a background node and connect that into the media out one. And let me actually click this here. I usually just use the second viewer to only have one view. And right now it's just a black background, but you usually want to make it transparent. So how you do that is when you highlight this background node, see how it's red, you just click on it, and then go into the inspector tab, you're able to turn down the alpha all the way, which makes it transparent. And then see here, I can zoom in and out. And now it's literally just a transparent clip. And I can work with this to create whatever animations I want. And then basically with icons, you'll have another media in one, except it's not a video, it's just like a picture or an icon. And the video you'll have a media in one as well. And yeah, the only difference is that it's a video. So like, for example, I could delete this media in one and there would just be nothing there. And like, let's say I wanted to add a background node, now it would just be a black background. Even though it is a video, I just pretty much went into the circuitry of it and deleted the actual video from it. So that's really the only difference. I prefer working in fusion compositions or adjustment clips most of the time. The only reason I would work in an adjustment clip is if I need to see what's below my adjustment clip when I'm making a certain animation. Normally I'll just bring in this, go into the fusion page, and just start my animation. So I'm going to close this inspector tab and explain what all of these icons are. So yeah, you should see this, and this is called the toolbar. And I actually explained this first one a little bit, but yeah, this one is pretty simple, just a background or a solid color. You have your color controls, you can change them like this with these sliders, or just click on this box and then go ahead, change the color to whatever color you want. Or you can choose horizontal, which will allow you to create a like horizontal gradient, and there's like different types of gradients. But if you select the gradient type, you can customize it however you want. So using these two dots, I can control how my gradient looks. You can also control them by dragging left and right in these boxes to change the coordinates. And then to change each side of the gradient, you can see right now I'm on the black side. So if I wanted to change this to red, I could do that. And then I can click on this triangle and change the white color to whatever I want. And I can even add new parts of the gradient. So if I wanted to add a third color in there, I just need to make sure my mouse is hovered like right on the edge here. And let's say I want it to be in the middle, and you can see I can move it around. Let's say I want it to be green. I can do that as well. Now I'm actually going to keep this background node instead of deleting it, because we need some sort of background to work off of. You can't start with a text node, for example. It just does not work if you try to start with a text node. So like, let me actually unconnect these. All I need to do is click on here and it will just get rid of it. If I wanted to start with this text node, I could, but it would give me problems down the line that you'll start to understand as I get into more examples. So you should start with the background. And if you really want to do a good practice, then you want to start with a background node like this and then make it transparent and then merge your next element. So in this case, it's the gradient that I created earlier. I can just drag the output of this node, and holding down my click, I can move where this output is going to go to. So if I drop it on this output of the background node, I can automatically create a merge node, and this merge node just layers whatever is in here. So in this case, it's my gradient on top of whatever was before it. So it's the same thing as having layers in the edit page, except it's within a composition in a node format. The next node is called fast noise. So if I merge this up, you'll see it will be put on top of this background. And if I want to see what it looks like by itself, I can click 2, and it's partially transparent. If you see the checkerboard, that means that it's transparent, but it has like this white cloudy effect. And it's a still image right now, but I can make it animated if I turn the seeth rate up. So now if I press play, it will play and it will just like be all animated. And by the way, this is like the play bar. So the numbers here are just counting the frames. You can see it's counting up and it's already been 93 frames. And if I go into the edit page, you can see the end here lines up with the end on this play bar. So this clip is in total 119 frames. And making sure you highlight this fast noise node, you can look in the inspector tab. You can change like the detail, for example, the brightness, scale even. This might make your computer lag a little bit if you turn it up too high. The angle, and then you can just like mess around with that. Now you can see I've created 2 merge nodes under the background and fast noise. These are just connecting all of these elements together, but I can change the size of certain things through the merge node. So you can see how I'm making the gradient background smaller, or I can make it bigger. I can change the angle of it or change like the center where it's located. I can also do this within this interface right here. So I can just take the middle and move it around, or take one of these arrows and it will only let me move it up and down. So I just undid that. And another thing I can do is change the apply mode, but I'll get into that later using a better example. So an example with that is, let's say I brought in this film burn here. you can see this film burn effect actually has a black background. And to get rid of it, I can go into the Merge 3 node and go into the Apply mode and select Screen. So now it will just be the film burn without the black background. So that's like one example of using the Apply mode. Now I can do some interesting things with the Operator mode. First thing that you'll probably be using most often is you can see how this film burn is on top of the fast noise node, which is on top of the gradient background. And it makes sense with the order here. Whatever it is last is going to be on top. But I can change that by changing the operator from over to under. It's going to act weird when it's on screen mode, so I need to just change it back to normal. And if I select under, you can see now it is under both of these two layers. So let me just delete this for now. Another example of this operator mode that I can use is with like PNG images. So I have this PNG icon of money, and let's say I just wanted to make this icon completely black. I can just take a background, and then using this merge technique that I told you earlier, I can connect it to the output of this media in1, automatically creates a merge node. So now we are working vertically. So it's the same thing, it just looks a little different. But if this looks complicated, you can just read it from left to right and from top to bottom. So basically it starts with this transparent background, and I can press 2 on each of these nodes so you can see the progression of what this looks like in real time. So first it starts with a transparent background, then you merge on the gradient background, and then after that, that connects to the fast noise, which merges on top. And then after that, it connects to a black background, which is merged on top of the money icon. And let's say I wanted the black background to not go outside of that money icon. This is where the operator mode comes in handy. So I can just select a top, and now it will not go outside of whatever it's merged on top of. Another controller you'll probably be using, which is the blend, which is basically the opacity of whatever you're merging. So in this case, it's a black background. I can make it like kind of half opacity. And let me press 2 on this final media out so we can see the final product. The next node is the text plus node. So this is essentially the same thing as what you might be used to in the edit page. So you can see in titles, we have text plus. It's pretty much the same thing. And actually, if you go into the text plus in Fusion, it's pretty much the same thing as doing this, but you can have it within your Fusion clip. So if I connect this, it will merge the text on top. You can make it say whatever you want, and you can mess with all these controls. I'm sure you're probably used to it, so I don't really need to explain too much here. One thing I'll go over is you can change where it's located with the layout, so the center, and then you can change the size here as well. And you can double click on this center word to reset it, and you can do this with anything really. So like if I change the center Z, I can double click it and it will reset it to the default. And then you have rotation, different axes. And one thing I'll cover with this is the shading. So you have your white solid fill. If I uncheck this, it will just get rid of the text completely, because right now the white solid fill is the only thing that's showing. You can change the opacity here. You can actually make it a outline like this, but I won't do that for now. And if you click on 2 here, you have a different element. So this is the red outline. So right now it's red by default, but you can make it black by changing the color here and change the thickness like this. So now there's an outline. And then another thing you can do is add black shadow. If you click on 3 right here and enable it, now it has some shadow. Let me change the softness of the shadow here. So I can change the X and the Y, and you can see the shadow is here a little bit. You can also change the position of the shadow with this tab. So the offset, you can see the shadow really clearly here if I move it all the way to the left. Next node you have here is the paint node. So if I merge this up, if I actually try to paint right now, you can see nothing comes up, and that's because you need a background node connected to it. So let's move this a little bit out of the way and bring in a background node. You can just input it into the paint node, and you need to turn down the alpha all the way. And now you can use this paint node to paint whatever you want. But you can see it will only show up for one frame. So if you want to have something show up on the entire clip, you need to change the toolbar here. So right now we're selecting multi-stroke. Multi-stroke just means that you can create multiple paint strokes within one frame. So the one you wanted to select if you wanted to show the entire clip is just this single paintbrush with nothing on it, called stroke. And this one, all right, so I just had a glitch. I just need to bring in a new paint node, so that's why it looks a little different. But with this stroke, I can create this one down here, or actually, let me undo that. I'll make it a different color so you can see the difference. I'll make it black, and I can actually change the brush setting. So I like to stick with this one usually, but you can experiment with these other ones. I can make the size a little bit bigger, and let's say I want to make it not very soft, so it's going to be like a very hard line. I can just do this, and you can see the black paint will show the entire time, while the white one will only show for one frame. So that is the main difference. And then you also have options with like a polyline stroke, circles. Won't get into that just to keep this tutorial kind of short. But you can see you can do like a circle here and it will show up the entire time. But there's better ways to do that. Next one is a color corrector. So with this one, if I try to merge it, you can see it actually appears red because that's not how you're supposed to use it. You just want to connect it directly to a node chain. So I can either put it right here, and that means that it will affect everything that is on this node chain up until the end, or I can just put it on one of these like node trees that I created, and it will just affect whatever is behind it. So this is why I recommended creating a transparent background at the start, because with this merge node setup, you can change everything individually. Like you can change the size of different things and like rotate different things, and it doesn't affect every single node. So that's the good thing about it. And let's say I wanted to color correct this dollar bill icon. I could either put it here, but it would also affect this black background, or I could put it right here, which would only affect the dollar bill icon. So let's say I do that, and I wanted to bring it towards the red side. I can just make it completely red, or I can change the hue like here. The saturation, I can bring it down all the way if I want it to just be black and white. And the lift, gamma, like all this stuff will change. See, the lift actually affects everything, and I'm not really sure why that happens. I think it might be just something complicated, but to fix that, you can go into the options tab and then click pre-divide/post multiply, and I believe that should fix it. So yeah, now it only affects these dollar bills. Next, we have color curves. So this does a similar thing to like what the color corrector does. So let me actually apply it on everything. By the way, I'm just holding shift and dropping it while holding shift and holding my left click onto this line here, and it automatically places it within there. But if you wanted to do it manually, you could just delete the chain right there and then connect it to here and connect this output to there. And I should explain this because you may have come across this problem and you're wondering what's happening. If one of your elements is not working at all, it could have been because you connected it wrong. So right now you can see these paint strokes are connected, but like let's say I made a mistake and I accidentally connected it to this blue output here. So let's do that. It won't actually show up. So the reason is because you have to connect it to the green output. And yeah, this is, if you hover over it, it will show you, this is the effect mask. And then this is going to be the foreground. So the effect mask is for certain things, like if you want to add a rectangle mask, I'll show that a little bit later. But yeah, make sure you connect it to the right input. And if you have any problems, make sure to check that first. Now with this color curves, I can bring this up, and this is kind of like if you ever use Photoshop or like a photo editing app and you use curves, or even in the color tab, there's something like this. But yeah, you can just add points here and make it as bright or dark as you want. So yeah, I use this sometimes, but you can also use the color corrector node. Next thing is the hue curves. So if I bring this in, it's a similar thing, except it messes with the colors more than like the actual brightness of it. You have brightness and contrast. I mean, this one's pretty simple, so I don't think I have to get into this one really. And like most of all of these, you can just change within the color corrector tab, but it's good if you want to do everything within the Fusion page. Next, we got blur. So this is another one where I just want to add it directly onto the line like this and change the blur size. So now everything will be blurred. If I actually want to move it, I can hold shift again and then drag it out while holding shift, and it will drag it out without like disconnecting it. And let's say I want to just blur the paint, I can do that. So now the paint is blurred, and I can change the blur size right here. Next we have the merge, I already explained this. And then after that we have multi-merge. So the only difference with this, it can get kind of complicated, so I won't really get into this too much. And you don't actually need the multi-merge, it's just like a helpful thing that they added. But if you want to, instead of having two merge nodes like this, you can actually connect both of these to one merge node just to simplify things a little bit. So if I actually delete these two merge nodes, I can bring in this multi-merge instead and connect this to the multi-merge and this to the multi-merge as well. So same thing, except you have both of your layers within one merge node. It's actually pretty cool. I believe you can run into some problems if you're trying to do animations down the line if you have this multi-merge instead of two like separate merge nodes, but this is also an option that you can do. And then you can actually control like the size and stuff individually depending on which layer you're selecting. And you can also choose like which layer is on top of one another. So we have this text and then we have the paint from before. So let's say I want to move the text over the paint and I want the paint to be on top of the text. I can just drag this above and you can see how that works. After that, we have something called channel booleans, and this one you'll need in very specific cases. I personally have never actually needed to use this. So as a beginner especially, you will probably never need to use this. All this does is it allows you to swap the different channels. So there's a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel, and an alpha channel that makes up your image. And it allows you to take a background and a foreground and kind of swap those channels together. But I'm going to skip that for now because you definitely will not really need to use that. Same kind of thing with the next tool, which is called matte control. You will only need to use this if you're really advanced and you're doing a specific thing. But other than that, I've never really had to use it. However, the next one is very important, and it is the transform node. So this basically does the same thing as what the merge could do, as I showed you earlier, except it is helpful to have it in a separate node because the merge also controls other things. So let's say that I wanted to change the size of this dollar bill icon. What I do is I just put the transform node under, and I could put it under here or I could put it up here. It doesn't really matter with these nodes that I have. So let's say I just put it here. Now I can actually use this control to make it smaller or make it bigger like that. And the basic other controls like the position, the aspect, and also the angle. After that, we get to all of the masking tools. So it starts with the rectangle masks, and all of the other masks are just different shapes. So you have rectangle, you have ellipse, you have one that isn't actually on the toolbar by default called triangle. I use this sometimes. And there is also polygon where you can basically make whatever shape you want. So a good example is you can bring in any image you want and create your own mask out of it. But for this example, I'll just use a solid color or a background, and I'll just keep it black because it will show up well on this background. But you basically want to always use a structure where it's a mask going into whatever it's cutting it out, and it's basically like a cookie cutter. So you're basically cutting out the black background in whatever shape you want. And I'm actually going to delete this multi-merge. I don't really recommend using it because it can give you some complicated problems, and you only need it in very specific cases. So I'll just add merge nodes and just do it like this instead. So now you can see it reappears, and now I can create this merge node, and you'll see now I have a black rectangle. This rectangle mask is around this size and it's cutting it straight out of this black background. Now with this mask I can make it bigger. I can use this control, or you have the width and the height sliders right here. And I can also change the position of it using either these controls on the side or these controls on the screen. Another thing I can do is control the corner radius, so that's basically pretty self-explanatory, and you can see how that looks on the screen. So this is what you're going to be doing basically to create any shape that you want. Another thing you can do is change the level, which is like the opacity, the border width, and then if you actually want to have like an outline only, you can uncheck the solid box and then only have the outline like that. But I'm going to recheck it in this situation and reset the border width. And then you can also have a soft edge. You can use it to mimic lighting. And I can actually show you right now what that could look like. So like, let's say I want to act like there's some white light shining on this black square. Then what I can do is move this up and duplicate this background node by using Command-C, Command-V, or Control-C, Control-V if you're on Windows. And then taking this output, I can drag it onto the output of this background, which creates a merge node. I need to reorganize this. So now on top of this black rectangle, I've merged on a full black background. First thing I want to do is change it to white. So make sure, even though I'm doing it right to left, kind of. I still want to be dragging the output onto the input, or in this case, it's actually the effect mask. So just make sure you don't mess those things up. So now I have this right circle merged on top of this black rectangle. I can go onto the merge node that connects this on top and change the operator to a top, which makes sure it does not go outside of this rectangle. And then I can turn the soft edge up. So now it almost looks like there's some white light shining on the rectangle. And then I can even turn down the level a bit to not make it as harsh. And you can see these other masks are pretty similar. Let me just bring in background so you can see. And I'm going to press 2 on this background just to show you what it looks like isolated. So the triangle, it just lets you control 3 points. You can see here are the controls, and you have the X and the Y axes. And then with this polygon mask, when you first create it, it won't show anything. And that's because you need to actually create the shape that you want. So that's where you create your points. So let's say I want to make a trapezoid. I could just do this. And then there's actually a trick you can do. If you want this line to be completely straight, before creating your next point, you want to hold shift. And while you're holding it, then you click. It's completely straight. And if I want to actually move this point, let's say I want it to be a little bit to the left, but I already clicked, I can actually hover over it. And when I get this cursor icon, I can hold shift again and drag it to left. And you can see I'm trying to move it up and down, but it won't let me because I'm holding shift. And that way I can move it to the left without moving it down or up. And then I can continue creating my shape and complete it. And you just have to adjust a little bit to however you like it. And I can do some cool things with these points. So I can highlight all of them, and there's all these tools at the top. One thing I can do is smooth them out. So this will round all of them out, and this is the shape that I kind of get. Or if I didn't like that, I can just click linear and it will go back to straight. And you can see there's handles on each one of these points. There's actually 2 handles for each one. So let's take this one, and I can drag the handle like this, and you can see how the curve starts to get created. If you've ever used the pen tool in Photoshop, then you will definitely be familiar with this. And you can see if I try to move the other handle, I'll move the one that I just adjusted. So to fix that, you just want to hold Command, and now I can adjust it individually. So you can create some curved lines with this tool, but the B-spline tool is much more for curved lines. So if I bring in another background, paste it, and connect this, and press 2 on here. With the B-spline tool, let's say I want to create this kind of shape. You can see when I create my third point, it will actually make a curve out of the points that I've created instead of just following the straight path. So let's just complete the shape. And yeah, it just works a lot more with curves. But other than that, it's pretty similar controls. You got the soft edge, border width, all the stuff I went through before. But you do actually have these controls, which are unique, where you can change the X rotation. So this is almost like it's in 3D space. You have the Y rotation and Z. So now I'll just delete all of these because I don't need them, and press 2 on the media out to see the final product. Now after this, on the toolbar, you have all of these other ones. I actually need to close my inspector tab to see all of them. And all of these deal with 3D pretty much. So I will not be getting into that in this tutorial because it is meant for beginners, and this is definitely a much more advanced or even intermediate thing, which I will be making tutorials for intermediates and a tutorial for advanced. And in the advanced tutorial, I'll be going into a lot more 3D effects that you can make and different like complex animations. So if you want to see the intermediate and the advanced one, I'm going to link in the description to a video editors group. So go check out the first link in the description. The video explains everything, so make sure to watch the video. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll be able to see all of the project files that I offer currently. And I'm going to be adding more in the future. So basically, whenever I'm making new videos, I will give you guys some value for free on YouTube, but I have all the project files and all the assets that I use, I usually give to that group. So go ahead and join that. And then I also do monthly calls where you can talk to me directly, ask me questions, and have me review your edits. So now that I went through all of the tools offered on the toolbar, or pretty much all of them, there's actually a ton of more tools that you can access by pressing Shift and Space, or it could be Control Space if you're on Windows. And you'll have this search bar where you can find so many tools. It is really crazy what you can actually do with Fusion. But for now, since this is a beginner tutorial, I'm going to keep it simple. And I'm going to show you a realistic example that you can do, like a very simple animation that's easy to understand based on what I've already went through. So let's go back into the edit page. Let's bring in another Fusion composition and go into the Fusion page. Good practice is just to bring in a background node and make it transparent. So now we have a blank slate to start with. And let's say I want to do a simple shape animation. So what I'm going to do is bring in a background, and let's say I want to have a gradient background, and I want it to be like blue and maybe like a darker blue, and connect that. So now we have this background, and I want to take a circle. So I'm going to take an ellipse and a black background, connect them up, make sure you go into the blue input, but if you just do it into the middle, it should work. And merge this on top of it. So now we have a black circle on top of a blue background. And to animate the circle, you can actually do it within the ellipse node. And just to give you like the full explanation, you can also do it within the merge node. So you see how you can move this left and right with the merge node. The only thing is, you don't usually want to use the merge node because it controls the boundaries where the circle can actually go. Let's say I move the circle to the left. You can see there's a boundary here. So if I go back into the ellipse and try to move it to the right, it will actually get cut off. Try to do it within the ellipse node. The other way that you can do it is with the transform node. Just put it right below the background node. Remember, I'm holding shift to make that go in without having to disconnect it. And I can also move it around like that. But again, you'll see there's boundaries. So if I want to go move it here, then it gets cut off. So the transform node is usually fine, but if you're working with a shape mask like this, then you want to do it within the ellipse node. And I actually want to make it smaller, so I would usually just grab on the corner here. You can see it only highlights the corner. It's actually kind of hard to see, so I'll zoom in. But yeah, it's only highlighting the corner. And this allows me to make it bigger or smaller without actually changing the dimensions of it. See how the width and the height is moving together? But if I wanted to change them individually, I can just use these sliders. I'll Command Z that. Or I could actually just use this control on the side. Notice how I'm grabbing on the side and not the corner. So let's make it a bit smaller and change the center using this control. I'm going to move it into the bottom left corner, and let's say I want to animate it to go to the top right corner. What we need to do is put a keyframe where we want the animation to start. So going to our keyframe timeline here, I want to start at frame 10. So that means it's going to play 10 frames before the animation actually starts. And then I will put a keyframe on frame 10. You can check here or check here. And it's going to be to the right of the center. So just click this diamond and move to wherever you want the animation to end. So I'll just say frame 60. And if you want to know how long that is, you can just go to the starting point, press the space bar, and you can see it takes about that long to get to frame 60. So it's going to be a relatively slow animation. But now that I'm on frame 60, all I need to do is move it. I don't actually need to click this icon again. It will automatically create one as soon as I move the center. So all I need to do is move it to the top right. And you can see if I go back, we have a really simple animation. And then if I want to go from here and animate it again, I can actually move my playhead to like frame 100, let's say, and move this down. Again, I don't need to click the keyframe icon because it will automatically create one for me. So I'm going to move it directly down this time using this arrow. And notice how I'm not using the square in the middle. I'm actually using the arrow, so it does not go left and right. So now the animation looks like this. It goes up and then it goes down. And let's say I want to move this entire animation, but I don't want to change each keyframe individually. I can highlight all these 3 points. Notice how you can see the points on the screen. You actually need to be highlighting this node where you created the animation. And I have these 3 points, which actually looks quite similar to the polygon node that we used earlier. And it actually does work pretty much the same. So you have these handles, so you can change the path of the animation like this using the handles. And if I don't want to move both of them at the same time, again, I'm going to hold Command. And now I have a much more curved animation. So it's something like this, which is pretty cool. And while they're all highlighted, so make sure you get all of them, you can move the entire animation wherever you want, and it will still work the same. If you want to do this same thing with an icon or a picture or even a video, all you need to do is just drag it in. And with like an image or a video, there won't be any like controls within it to change the position. So that's when you'll need to use the transform node, or you could use the merge node. Either one works, but usually you want to use the transform node. So I can just move it over here using the center and then put my first starting keyframe, then move forward a little bit, actually create it on frame 95, which is fine. And then I can like move it up here, for example, and you can see I have a simple animation like that. So if before watching this video, this is your first time seeing Fusion, hopefully you're much more confident with Fusion and you're not really afraid to go into the Fusion page anymore. Again, check out all those links in the description. And after you're done that, here's another good video for beginners that I recommend you watch.